My husband and I live in Oakland. We raised our children there. We decided to send them to Oakland Public Schools. A lot of people we know would either bail out. They might do elementary school, but otherwise they would, bail out at middle school, lie to get into a different school than the middle school they were supposed to go to, or they'd move out of the area. So usually this is happening all over the country in all the cities. What people have been doing is kind of abandoning their urban public school districts. But we decided, for some reason, I just said, sending kids to the local public school. So we did that. So I got really involved. Once we got to the middle school, I found a school that had a tremendous amount of needs. The elementary school had a lot of a really strong PTA, could do a lot of fundraising, but their middle school was just really needed more adults in that school to make things better for the children. So I stopped volunteering at the elementary school and then started doing a lot of stuff at the middle school. Then after a while I got a job there it was kind of a do-gooder job as a parent coordinator, part-time. And what we did is we produced newsletters, tried to enhance the school to home, home to school communication. So it was really useful for me to be working on site, it was part-time, but over the 7 years I was there, I got a really good feel for kind of the flow of the school year. It has a certain feel before it began, it has a certain feel in the fall, a feel, in the spring, it has a feel right before it ends. So you really kind of start to sense those rhythms. And then also at the same time, during those years was when Oakland Unified had a state takeover. So we lost the school board lost control and it was removed, and the superintendent was taken out and replaced with the state administrator. And what we ended up having is a series of 3 state administrators sent to us from Jack O'Connell, the state superintendent, who were all trained by the Broad Foundation. So Broad Foundation is one of these, Eli Broad is a real estate magnate, Kaufman and Broad Homes. He's old now, he's I think about 78, but he still uses his foundation to, well... I'm getting there. Well, he's retired and this is his pastime, is destroying public education in the name of transforming it, So anyway, I got involved with that, and then, eventually I was started to be, write letters to the editor. I got too opinionated, and somebody from the district came to me one day at the school and basically asked me, said, "It's time for you to resign," So I said, "Great," I was sad, because I really enjoyed that community and loved that school, and but I was out of there, and I started a blog, and to kind of write about all this. This is in early 2008, and there was much less public discussion about all of these issues back then. And so I was like, I'd feel out here and reach out here, and actually eventually connected with Diane Ravitch and some other people across the country. And then in May 2010, I decided that I'm not working now. My husband's the main breadwinner in our home, and so I have time to do all this research. So in May 2010, I decided I'm going to start a blog called Charter School Scandals, because right in my neighborhood is, I don't know if you've heard of the American Indian Public Charter School. Those of you, it's like one of the highest test scoring charter schools in the country. Has a real guy, very controversial director who took it over. So I know all about that charter school. I know how they changed their demographics. I know I call it demographic engineering that he did once he got into that school. And I know people who were present when he told lies to incoming families. And we would always, at our school, see batches of children come over right before test-taking time who would be basically pressured out by that school because they were going to not score well enough. So it's all that kind of stuff just really ticked me off, because here I am trying to get people to care about the local public school, and this guy and his school is, it's very close to where I live. In fact, it's so close that when the FBI and the IRS served their warrants on that school, their search warrants, just last week, the helicopter was flying around. I went outside to see where's the helicopter flying, and then later learned that it was flying over that school. So anyway, I knew that bad things were going on with charter schools just from that experience. I said, I'm going to start a blog that's going to have just to be about charter school scandals. So I'm going to go online, do Google searches, find stories about charter schools, and I'm going to put them all on my blog, list them on my blog. Okay, sounds good, right? I mean, I am swamped with that. I can't keep up with it now. If anybody wants to volunteer with that effort, help me format these stories, that's great. You don't have to do any writing, you just have to format. Anyway, very quickly into that project, I encountered a school in Salt Lake City, Utah, where some apparently raised concerns, and a teacher, about the school being associated with this religious group called the Gulen movement. I'd never heard of it. And then that story led to another article right after that of a school in Tucson, where same thing, a parent was concerned that the school was associated with this religious group out of Turkey. And I said, that's really strange. And then I remembered having looked at the board listing of a charter school in Oakland a few years earlier, and I could not recognize the nationality of those names. I mean, back then I knew nothing about Turkey, nothing. I mean, I probably couldn't have told you anything about the Ottoman Empire, Turkey, Republic, nothing. But anyway, I went back and looked at those names, and I found out that, yes, lo and behold, they're all Turkish. So what's the chance of that, right? At the Turkish school in Salt Lake, and then they're all related. They're all sharing principles, one had worked at another, on and on and on. I go, this is really bizarre. So there I went into this story, this world. So I don't know if, I'm not going to presume, I decided today I'm not going to presume that all of you understand charter schools. So I'm just going to give you a really brief overview of that, and then I'll go into Fethullah Gulen and his movement, and then tell you a little bit about his, the U.S. activities in the charter schools. The first charter school law was in Minnesota in 1991. Okay, so since that time, almost all states have implemented charter school laws, with the exception of 8 states at this point. Alabama, Kentucky, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Vermont, and West Virginia do not have any charter school law. Typically, these laws are passed, and then they often have what's called a charter school cap, meaning, okay, we're only going to have 100 charter schools in the state. But lo and behold, within a few years later, the same forces that wanted the charter school law to get passed will come in and say, okay, now we want to pass a resolution to lift all the charter school caps. So that's happened already in California. Now the laws vary from state to state. So basically what you need is you need an agency. You need agencies within that state who are the charter school authorizers, and that too varies from state to state. Okay, sometimes it's like a state commission, sometimes it's just the school districts, sometimes schools of higher education can authorize charter schools. Like I say, it varies from state to state. In California, we have 3 different charter school authorizers. There are local school districts can authorize charter schools, county offices of education can authorize charter schools, and there's a state board of education that can authorize charter schools. So a lot of times when you have these multiple types of authorizers, then what the charter schools do if they're denied by one agency is they'll just shop. So schools have been denied by OUSD, who've gone on to shop, and they eventually get chartered by Alameda County. If they can't get there, they'll go to the state. So they shop around until they can get their charter school passed. Now, the deal about charter schools is that their very existence is based on their test scores and their enrollment. Okay, they need the money coming in, and they can't get the money coming in unless they display good enough, adequate test scores. And so, that's how it works. There's just a real conflict already right there, in that their survival is based on their test scores. So who can start a charter school? Well, sometimes it's a group of people. I mean, we could assemble after. I could meet 5 of you, and we could sit down and work on an application. Applications are usually, in this state, I've found to be around 300 pages, sometimes up to 600 pages. And it's just kind of on and on and on, kind of this gobbledygook about how wonderful we're going to be. And so then we'll submit it to an authorizer, and they review it. School districts, they have offices that analyze this stuff and then make a recommendation to the superintendent and the board. Well, to the board, who's actually the voting entity. So we can do that, or you can have a charter management organization that can do that, that's kind of like more of a business. Sometimes they're for-profit, most of them are not-for-profit. But just because they're not-profit doesn't mean that people aren't getting rich off of these charter schools. So that's how. So then they get approved for usually a period of time, 5 years, typically sometimes 10 years, and then they have to submit a renewal application. It's reviewed again, all their test scores are looked at. So the school in Oakland has, Gulen Charter School in Oakland that we were at yesterday, opened in 2004. It's already been renewed twice, most recently this past spring. I'm going to show you a picture. There was actually a protest. Does anybody know, does this guy look familiar to anyone here? Anyone? Anyone here? Yeah.
Didn't 60 Minutes do a story about this?
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, I remember, yes.
May 2012, yeah.
Yes, 60 Minutes.
Anybody else know? No? Okay. This is amazing to me, okay? This is like one of the, well, let's just continue on. This is a protest, yes, just yesterday, and this was a thrilling advance in terms of letting a few more people know about who Fethullah Gulen is. It was organized 2 weeks ago by Turkish Americans. Somehow, someday, somebody's got to make the connection between what's going on in Turkey and what's going on in the United States with these charter schools. Now, people don't want to touch it. You know, it's like the people who do it. I wrote to Philadelphia Inquirer, to a woman who's covered Gulen Charter School there. She says, well, I can't really do it because it's more about an international affair, you know, and the international affair people do not care about what's going on in the United States with the charter schools. So it's like, you know, that's part of the problem with why you don't know more about this. You know, there was the 60 Minutes piece. Yay! You know, there needs to be a whole lot more. There needs to be a frontline episode on this. I wrote to them a couple years ago. They weren't interested. All right, well, but however, in 2010, if you were in Turkey, you would have read this article in the newspaper that talks about how the Walton Family Foundation gave millions of dollars to the Magnolia School chain here in Oakland, or here in California. Okay, there's Fethullah Gulen. People in Turkey know who Fethullah Gulen is. The people who read Milliyet in Turkey, which is a major newspaper there, they know who Fethullah Gulen. They know that Fethullah Gulen is getting your tax dollars for his charter schools. We don't get to hear too much about this, do we? All right. So anyway, I go on so much about this. I know so many details. So this is what's really hard for me. You know, I'm a researcher, not necessarily a public speaker. All right. Basically, I'm just going to give you a real brief history of Turkey, okay? For 600 years, the Ottoman Empire existed and expanded and became extremely powerful, okay? Now, during the beginning of World War I, the Ottoman Empire, which was intact at that time, with a sultan and a caliph, and it chose to align itself with the Central Powers, okay, during World War I. Well, in World War I, they lost. All the Central Powers lost. So the lands that the Ottoman Empire had was divided up into a lot of those countries, like we know now, like Syria and Lebanon and all of that. Okay, because after they lost, the Allies came to Turkey and occupied. So Italy occupied part of Turkey, France occupied part of Turkey. And you know, Great Britain, UK occupied part of Turkey. Greece occupied part of Turkey immediately after World War I. All right, that went on for a few years until a gentleman who had actually fought in World War I for the Ottoman Empire. His name was Mustafa Kemal, and he was a military guy who decided, I'm going to have a war of independence against these Allied occupiers, and we're going to have our country be Turkey. And he won. He was given the name Ataturk. So if you look at anything for Turkey, you'll often see an image of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. Ataturk means father of the Turks. He's the George Washington to the Turkish people. Now what Ataturk did was he brought in he kicked out all that religious stuff that had been going on during the Ottoman Empire. He kicked, you know, the transition made, it's like, Gone was the Ottoman script. In was the new Turkish script, which is why when you read Turkish, it's in Latin-based script. Got rid of the fez. He let women vote. He was, you know, very European. And I think that's partly, why the bridge between Turkey and Europe has existed. Turkey's sort of been a standalone country in the Middle East for all these years. So anyway, but you have to understand that he's highly secular. We're not going to have religion in any of the government institutions. So, but you have to understand that the love for the Ottoman Empire never died away. Okay, just because they, Mustafa Kemal says we're going to have this, secular country. Off in the rural areas, that was great for Istanbul, but off in the rural areas, it's kind of like here, people really held on to their religion. So out in eastern Turkey, in a small town in 1941, a gentleman was born, Fethullah Gulen, who his father was an imam, and Fethullah Gulen went to school for some time, but he never graduated from college. I think he has like a 5th grade education. But he followed in his father's footsteps and became an imam. Okay, so he's 1941. So by the time late 1960s, early 1970s comes along, he's preaching in a lot of places in Turkey, and he's getting followers. His followers are producing pamphlets and recordings, and he's getting a greater and greater and greater following. And the government knows who he is. He got put in jail once, and anything in how Turkey handled their religiousness was that they would there'd be like the military was in charge of it, and it's kind of problematic there, but that's a whole other thing. Anyway, that's who Fethullah Gulen is, okay? So he became extremely powerful. Right now he has they estimate about 6 million followers around the world. Okay, so he's one of the major leaders, Muslim leaders right now. So anyway, Fethullah Gulen, when he was a child, there was one book I read, when he was a child, he would look at the map of the Ottoman Empire, and he would wonder, what happened to my country? Where did it go? We used to be so large, and now we're so small. And that book attributed that from him. There was an article about him, an interview that was done. He was reporting that. So that's kind of where his ambitions are, is kind of in this re-expansion, this reassertion of what he would like to see, again, of Turkey's increased power in the world. Okay? That's pretty well acknowledged. So anyway, the recent protests in Turkey, I don't know if you're aware of those or not, but in about 10 years ago, a guy named Erdogan, Prime Minister Erdogan, was brought into power. And a party called the AKP rose to its ascendance. Now it was a conservative Islamist party. Okay, so they've come in and they've kind of reasserted the more conservative religious values of that country. Now Gulen runs media empire there, so partly the reason that Erdogan is in power is because of what the members of the Gulen movement have contributed to that. Anyway, yeah, that's about that for the history of Turkey. So like I said, the protest in Pennsylvania was a big deal. The protest, it was directly tied to the protests that have been happening in Turkey, which is the reason that they're there is because the secular-oriented people don't like what Erdogan has been doing. Okay, that's what a lot of these protests. He's very autocratic, or dictatorial, autocratic, whatever. I'm not good with all that, but anyway, that's what they were protesting, and that's what they're continuing to protest. People have been killed because of this. So here we have Turkish Americans who are saying, expose the imam. Stop the world's most dangerous Islamist. This is Turkish Americans. This isn't Tea Party people. These are Turkish Americans who are really, a lot of Turkish people are really upset with Fethullah Gulen and what's going on. So yesterday we had our protest in Oakland, and we're there, and we're filmed by a guy. We see a guy with a camera across the street. And some of the people go over and check with him, he's carrying this press pass, and the press pass is to this thing called the Travel and Adventure Show. Okay? And it says Travel and Adventure Show press pass. So I go home, I took a picture of him, I enlarge it, I track that logo down. This is like, Travel and Adventure Show is a convention. It's a show that happens in multiple places across the country. It's like where you can see Rick Steves talk, and you learn about where to go. It's like one of these places, conventions, okay? So they give free press passes. So this guy had that, and he was saying, oh no, these are the people who send me. You know, we didn't have a smartphone. I didn't look it up and put the pieces together there. Okay? This is typical. This is a Gulenist tactic. These people cannot be trusted. They're not straight with you. Okay? I know someone who was cyber attacked from Turkey, very high level software attempted cyber attack within the past month. You can read about it in Wired. Okay? They do not like their critics. We don't know who this guy is. He was filming us. Another guy was up the street with a telephoto lens. There were 2 guys sent up. All right, with fake crap IDs, telling lies. More journalists are in prison in Turkey than in any other country. There's a lot of anyone who has criticized Gulen is afraid. If you watch the 60 Minutes piece, they can't get anybody there to talk to them about Fethullah Gulen. There's a guy named Dexter Filkins. He's this Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who wrote an article about Erdogan in the New Yorker in 2012. He says his line about Gulen, he's going on about Prime Minister Erdogan, his power and all that, and then he gets to the Gulen movement and the AKP and how it's all woven into each other. And he says, you know, Gulen is a powerful ally of Erdogan, but is reviled and feared by much of Turkey's population. Okay, and this is extremely serious. This is geopolitical stuff that our kids have gotten involved with. It's not right. So anyway, there are Fethullah Gulen left Turkey. He was kind of forced out of Turkey at around 1998, I think, and a compound was set up for him in Pennsylvania. Initially, he was going to be refused his green card by Immigration Services and Department of Homeland Security, but he got a lawyer and appealed. He got some letters from a number of people, including former members of the CIA. There's a WikiLeaks article from the diplomatic cables of Istanbul that say that the rabbi of Turkey had gone to them saying that he's been pressured to write one of these letters of support for Gulen, and he didn't feel comfortable doing it. So anyway, Gulen's been living in Pennsylvania saying he's too sick to come out to the public, although every week he makes sermons in Turkish for his visitors, or for visitors to his website, one of his many websites. So anyway, yeah, there he is. So that's why the protest was in Pennsylvania. So anyway, the Gulen movement, once he came here, they really started escalating the number of their activities. They are extremely active here in a number of ways. And I have a handout at the end if you want it. Their major umbrella organization across the United States is called the Turkic American Alliance. Okay, the Turkic American Alliance has 6 regional organizations. The regional organization that has California is the West America Turkic Council. And I say Turkic because Gulen really had it lucky. At the end of with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, okay, he had already set up his schools in Turkey. But then the Soviet Union dissolved, and immediately he sent his followers out into the former Turkic Ottoman Empire lands. Okay, so there are schools in Central Asian countries and schools in the Caucasus. Their first school outside of Turkey was in Azerbaijan. So that's why it's Turkic, not Turkish necessarily. So you have that, and you have and then within each of those regional organizations is a set of each of those regional organizations is an umbrella over local organizations, or small organizations. So, for instance, with these Gulen charter schools, what you find is that They'll engage their students in activities that are sponsored. None of the organizations will claim the charter schools. Okay? If the American public caught on to this ever and the scale of it, they would be outraged. There would be resistance, and they would lose all this money. They get at least $400 million per year being fed to them for supposedly running their schools. But what you'll see is the students being involved in Turkish contests, Turkish language contests, or they're taken to the Anatolian Festival down in Southern California, there are 2 Turkish festivals in California. One's in Monterey by a non-Gulenist Turkish organization. The other one is down in Orange County every year by Gulen Associated Association. The Gulen movement basically does four things. If you keep that in mind, they have business organizations. This is around the world. Okay, they have schools, and their educational activities are their largest focus. They also do interfaith dialogue and Turkish cultural organizations, and then they have media, a lot of different magazines and newspapers. So just to run through what they have done with the charter schools and talking about failure to disclose. People have picked up on it, even before the 60 Minutes piece. Reporters were asking them, it's like, no, we're not. We might, some of us might be inspired. But the fact remains that all the control of all these schools they're all founded by individuals who are Turkish or Turkic, with a few token Americans sometimes. All the principals, all the business managers, all the control is in the hands of the Gulenists. So they started their first school here in 1999. Actually, there were 2 schools they started in Ohio. And now it's up to, it'll be 140 when fall opens. So you'll have 5 new schools coming in this year. The expansion continues. They're going to be in 27 states. 1 new state, South Carolina, they got in. They tried to get in Maine last year. They will have in 2011, 2012, which is the year before last, right? It was 52,000 students. In California, that same year, it was 3,300 students. In 2011, if you add up all the money on their Form 990s for what they get from government contributions, that's $26 million just for 1 year in 2011. That doesn't include the money that's been given to them by the Gates Foundation, the Walton Foundation. I'm sure Gates has given money to their Texas group. And then, of course, they get advantages from all of those charter school facilities grants. They're extremely easy to identify once you know what they look like. They're super easy, because they all have these shared characteristics. They do a lot of staff importing. They do, around the world, in fact, they employ local teachers for like English and history. But the typical pattern is that they employ imported teachers for math and science and computer subjects. Okay, so if you can look at the H-1B visa data, and you'll see that they've had imports. They don't necessarily tell you where they're from, but they'll all be from either Turkey or from a Central Asian country, mostly from Turkey. So keep in mind that the school in Oakland has its maximum enrollment was last year it had 233. Before, other than that, it's like 188 or less. Okay, so from between 2004 and 2011, this 200-student school applied for 33 computer, math, or science teachers applications. Okay, 33. 2 Turkish teachers, 3 principals or administrators, 6 business facilities or computer system managers, and which is a lot. And we don't know, again, how many of those people, those are applications. So your tax dollars are paying for them to apply for these teachers. This is all the stuff that needs to be investigated. It's how much money are they spending on these applications? Who's coming in? Who's coming in and maybe not working at that school, but maybe going and doing something else? Nobody's there's no oversight. Nobody's looking into this. So anyway, you know, basically American school children and taxpayers have been pulled into these weird geopolitics. Now, this was a find just last week. I learned, you know, Chris Hayes, to watch MSNBC. You ever watch MSNBC? He's a talk show host. You know, I think he follows, either precedes Rachel Maddow. Okay, here's what he tweeted in March 2012. How has no one done the big investigative piece on Turkish Imam Fethullah Gulen and his movement's global school network? Investigative is the key word there, to me. I don't know. I don't know. This was before the 60 Minutes piece. You know, where's the information? One of my favorite sentences about all of this is that the American Foreign Policy Council, a really kind of a right-wing think tank in DC, has a report on their website called the Fethullah Gulen Movement. At the very end, if you go that and you scroll way down to the very last sentence is, the U.S. is the only country where the Gulen movement has been able to open its schools and have them funded by the taxpayers of the host country. Okay? This is because of the charter school. It says this is because of the charter school experiment.